This is Signal and Noise, bringing clarity to data, tech, and AI.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Signal and Noise. I'm Brett House, joined by my co-host Rio Longacre. Today we've got Joe Root, and this is someone who's been thinking about the future of sell-side long before it became fashionable in the industry. If you don't know who Joe is, he's the co-founder and CEO of Permutive, right? A University of Oxford and Imperial College of London grad. That's pretty impressive. Anybody can get into Oxford. And I was fascinated by your background because it went from like sales intern to CEO. I was like, I want to hear about what happened in that transformation, in that sort of trajectory. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Right. But you were kind of the perfect combination. English, we're kind of, I was a comparative literature major. Rio was involved in journalism. We both had that sort of English side of things and computing with a master's in computing. Seems like the perfect combination.
What more
in
could you want
world.
in life? Yeah.
I know, seriously. Like you could talk and communicate, and you could build stuff, right? Which is super.
And he lives in New
awesome.
York. He's got it all.
And he lives in New York, right? So
God, I feel so good now.
Permutive arguably is a platform built to help publishers take back control of their data and monetization. Sometimes been called a publisher DMP. And obviously, we're at a time in the industry when it seems like a lot of the industry is moving in the opposite direction. Right, with the buy side sort of grabbing control, the open web sort of under threat by the walled gardens. We've all talked about this a lot. Really what I think makes this conversation super interesting is the thesis about how this is evolving in the age of AI. And I know that you've got some, you've been talking about outcomes era, right, which we've heard a ton in the last, 2 years, and a shift away from selling impressions towards delivering measurable results. So, in sort of which is pretty interesting from a publisher perspective. Stop selling impressions. It seems like you're leaning towards. So, would love to hear a little bit about you. Did I get your bio right? How did you go from a sales intern to a CEO? And tell us a little about yourself, Joe.
Yeah, you got the bio very on point. So, me and my co-founder met in our first week at university or kind of college over here. So we were kind of going through a computer science degree. Both have become like really interested in the same area of research around kind of distributed systems and machine learning, and also stumbled upon like this guy called Paul Graham, was writing these essays about starting a company and
Y Combinator.
Exactly,
yeah.
Y Combinator. And at this point in time, we just had no interest in going to work in. At that point in time in London, like the only tech you could do was go and work at an investment bank. And we just we're looking at what you could do in America. It's just so much more exciting starting your own company. So at this point in time, Y Combinator is only a few years old, and kind of being a computer science grad, I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to in any way start a company if I can't sell something. So met the guys at GoCardus, who were kind of YC company in London, and they said, hey, why don't you come along and learn how to sell things for a while? And I was picking up phones, and wasn't the best salesperson in the world, but it gave me a good appreciation of the art of it. And a few months later, we were at Y Combinator, and that was the journey into Permutive.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've taken away from a lot of execs and founders that I've talked to and CEOs is that when you can combine sales experience, whether you're really good at it or not, and product kind of subject matter expertise and like deep knowledge, that combination is just incredibly powerful, especially when you're a CEO, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Plus, it's funny, Joe, like that, and like what you said too about having to pick up the phone and just call people. I mean, that is such an important skill to learn. No one's naturally good at it when you first start. It just takes trial and error, dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands of phone calls to do that, right? I was actually my first job in marketing.
Yeah,
a lot of it was market research. So
yeah, it's terrible, but I went in thinking, sales is this kind of dark art, and unlike this pure thing of computer science, but like I really got appreciation for like great salespeople have this process and methodology, and the best ones are just relentless at following it.
Yeah, they're worth their weight in gold, a good salesperson, that's for sure. Like you can put up with a lot for a good salesperson.
Yeah, one of my favorite recent books is The Unsold Mindset. I give credit to Mark Sabatini, and it's all about for reading that one. It's one of those great, like if you're if you have a 4-hour drive ahead of you, you're going up north or something, out of New York City, that is. it's just a great like 3 or 4 hour ride. And it's just all about how you sell by not selling at all. There's a little bit of this sort of 7 secrets to highly effective living kind of stuff going on there. All these business books seem to have it, but it's about like, how do you actually sell authentically and forget all the fucking mechanisms and techniques and, be authentic, be your authentic self, and people will buy that.
I think that's even more important now, Brett, right? With like all of the AI like slop that's out there. And like, I mean, I posted about this morning. I ran a campaign for this company I remember we sent out thousands of emails. We got a bunch of opens, not a single clicker response. Just people are so just done with the deluge of content. They're overloaded. They don't want a white paper. They don't want to be a qualified, quote unquote. I mean, I think the way that people sell and the way you have to market has really changed quite a bit. It's fascinating. So Joe, we were really excited to have you on this. And you were on my previous podcast, First Party Pod, which is defunct. And then part of the reason why Brett and I decided to do this pod was we were looking for something to do. And you were on that one. We had a great discussion about where Permutive was at the time. It's been about a year. So we're really stoked to get you back on this because of all of the really interesting changes going on within AI and how that's impacting not only the AdTech, let's say, AdTech, MarTech stack itself, but how that's affecting the balance of power. Brett mentioned this before, right? I think historically, I think it's easy to argue like the buy side had a lot more power over sell side, and publishers, really have not done well the last 20, 25 years. I mean, I think the joke is like, no matter what happens, they always get hosed, right? So AI is maybe changing that equation as decisioning moves closer to data. And if a lot of the most valuable data is on the sell side, and maybe the center of gravity starts to shift, and I'm starting to see some interesting things. So we're really keen to get your perspective. So you're Permutive. I really feel like you're probably in the center of this shift and really maybe accelerating a lot of it, from centralized buy-side optimization to distributed sell-side intelligence that is really closer to the user and closer to where things are happening. So the question we're exploring today, I think is pretty disruptive, is like what really happens, as Brett mentioned earlier, when publishers move away from that race to the bottom and trying to sell impressions and start selling outcomes. And if we're the age of outcomes, they should be anyway. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. We're excited to have you on, and let's kick off the Q&A.
Yeah. So Joe, what's changed? I mean, you were on that First Party Pod with Rio. Seems like ancient history, right? A lot has changed since then. And you guys were talking about curation and probabilistic
Curation
targeting.
was all the rage. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Curation was the rage for a couple of years there. Now it's really on helping publishers package and sell their data more effectively. Like what has really changed since now and then? What have you seen?
Yeah. So I think what's remained very true in that time has been this addressability crunch, and loss of signal is huge. So I think in the year between, just more and more agency and advertiser folk are recognizing the data, the things I used to make decisions on aren't scaling, and I'm experiencing that in my reach, I'm experiencing that in my outcomes. And you can see kind of the market become much more literate around this. When we first went out 2 years ago, it wasn't really a thing. Like the fact that Rio, now you kind of see this as such an essential part of the ecosystem, I think kind of shows the trend lines which are starting to play out, and people just a lot more literate here. In parallel with that, I would say like the rate of disruption within kind of the agency business model has just been remarkable to watch from the outside. We talk
about that a ton. Yeah.
We had a really great, we've got a really great agency exec who she joined our board recently, and she was saying kind of, like we were talking to the last Friday, she's like, yeah, the disruption model for agencies used to be like every 7 years there would be a disruption. In kind of the last couple of years, she's like, that's narrowed down to 2 years. And
I wouldn't be surprised if it's narrowed down to 6 months.
Yeah, it feels like we just
the
retail media thing just like finished disrupting. Now suddenly AI, you're right. It's like wave after wave every couple of years now. Yeah.
Now the FTE model is sort of being called into question, right? The billable hours model, all that.
Exactly. So that is such a tectonic shift, that billable hours model to agencies. Because of AI, that billable hours model no longer works with clients. And what we're seeing at the agency level is, hey, increasingly, that means agencies now need to find ways to make money from the budgets they trade versus that billable hours model. And clients see a lot of benefits to that and a lot of good alignment there. But that now changes how media gets bought, how the agencies think about that. And when you pair that with kind of what's possible with AI, it's like, wow, we can rethink this whole ecosystem because there's such an urgent agency pressure to rethink these models.
Yeah.
So Joe, your recent conversations, that a couple I really keyed onto was, like, one was with the AI Edge podcast with Miles and Shiv. Great discussion. I love their
Great guys
podcast.
as well.
Yeah, great
Very
guys.
good.
Yeah, in fact, Shiv was on one of the earlier guests in this pod, end of last year. With the, like, one thing you touched on a little bit was that with the shift towards, like, AI as it's adopted and, like, really, like, looking at who controls the stack. When did it click that this is not just another gimmick? This is not just, maybe not even another layer, but this is something fundamental in how it changes, like, the balance of power and the center of gravity. When did that start
Yeah.
clicking?
I think there are two things which we've really noticed and observed so the history of the business is we spent the first 7-8 years to exactly what you guys said. We went and built this data management platform on the supply side because we felt, hey, third-party signals are disappearing. There's this abundance of signal on the supply side. And if you can build the right infrastructure and technology, you can make that available and decisions could be made on that instead of this kind of declining signal, which was available on the buy side.
So was that like a real focus on enhancing first party signal?
Totally.
Right? And capturing that in a much richer way for publishers?
Exactly. So like really kind of publishers have this enormous volume of signal, but the pipes which sit in between a publisher and kind of the DSP on the other side really don't want to take too much signal into them because it kills the cost margins of that business. So DSPs, SSPs, everyone's getting rid of inventory and bid impressions. They're getting rid of signal. So actually, by the time an impression
that's a compute-based price.
Yeah, totally
assuming,
right.
From just the
compute
data
and bandwidth
passing.
cost.
Well, yeah, the amount of signal, they're only taking in a fraction of what's available to actually for the bidding logic or any of that, right? I mean, it's a lot of it's just missed entirely.
Exactly. So by the time an impression makes its way over, often 70% of them have been stripped away anyway because there are these kind of limits the DSP places on what can be sent to them. And then when you observe the impression, they'll have an ID, but most of those third-party IDs are missing. And even things like the URL get stripped of all the parameters, so you're just buying a domain. So now you're making decisions on like barely any signal. And on the other side, you have this abundance of signal. Every interaction you take, what you're looking at, what you're researching.
Which tells a little bit more about who you are and maybe what segments you belong in, right? Don't they say isn't the average consumer in like 36 or 37 different segments in like a traditional
plus the contextual signals too, right? So there's both.
So there's what we observe is there's 2 to 3x order of magnitude more data on the supply side because
it's not being leveraged.
Not being leveraged at all. So you're talking about 100 to 1,000x more signal available on the supply side, which just all disappears as you go through kind of this supply chain today. And that data is really powerful if you can leverage it to make decisions. But today, the way decisioning is done on the demand side kind of stops us from leveraging that.
Yeah.
So
that has real world downstream impacts. And like just as a funny aside, when I was at Exalate, they had on their privacy page, you could actually type in kind of who you were from a profile perspective. I don't know if you threw in your email address or a cookie ID. It's probably your email address, and then it backed that hashed email into everything that it knew about you. I mean, it was so far off. So it thought that I was a single female urban influencer living in by myself in New York City. I was a married with young child, aging white man, not an urban influencer. So it was just, I always wondered, because you're
why am I getting all these cosmetics ads, right?
Yeah, you're selling the power of one-to-one and programmatic and automation and audience segmentation and specificity. And yet it seems so diverse from reality. And to your point, it's because they're probably only capturing a small sliver. Either that or they just associate with the right ID.
You're desperately trying to recreate from that tiny slither what are very complex data sets on the other side. So what you end up doing is people take an IP address and try and turn that into a deterministic ID. But these things, there's research out there, they're wrong 85% of the time. So then you get
precise.
Yeah,
exactly.
Anybody in the family can be on that IP address watching a show or whatever.
And they're getting recycled all the time.
You might be, depending on what network on or machine, you could show an IP in a different city entirely. I remember, I think my work laptop sometimes shows up from Chicago. It's crazy, right?
Exactly.
Because the way it's routed. So not precise at all.
Yeah. So that kind of loss of signal I think kind of transpired, Brett, to your point, right? Like it has real meaningful business impact. And I suppose what we've seen and what's really started to shift our mind is like when we originally started, we saw the impact on media companies. So you're a publisher, 70% of your inventory doesn't have a third party ID. So now the buy side, it's not even that they aren't bidding on it, they don't even see it. So you're getting paid nothing on this inventory.
Yeah,
The
they'll prioritize IDs first for sure. The way DSPs work.
Exactly, precisely that. But then the other side of it, and what's been really interesting is, hey, as agencies go through this business transformation, which is like that FTE model is no longer how they make money. A key part to how they make money as they build out their operating system and the principal trading business is the data businesses they built. And the impact this is having on their data businesses, which has been the really interesting piece, is like those data businesses are losing scale because they're relying on IDs which have disappeared. Not because the data isn't amazing, but because kind of the current open RTB system isn't giving them what they need to be able to pen their data. And that's making it really
how many
hard
agencies, Joe, are actually like leveraging sell side signals, right? I mean, it's because, buy side, you're right. They have, massive, like we talked about this in our last episode, I think a lot of the legacy data businesses, these were database marketing companies. They've built these massive databases, hundreds of millions. Some of them claim billions of users, right? Over, with all of these different data points they're capturing. But how many of them are leveraging like sell side signals? Which I mean, I agree with you. Like it's like not leveraged enough, certainly, but it contains some of that rich information for targeting that they should be using.
Yeah. So what we've really seen is these companies are leveraging sell-side signals, but they're doing it in a tactical way, not necessarily yet in a strategic way. And that's what's changing very quickly. So if you rewind a year ago, what we found is agencies are saying to their teams, hey, you need to go and fly X $1 million against this, against our data sets with your client. And the client teams will be like, hey, actually, I just can't get this spend away because the audiences aren't scaling well enough. And when that happens, what a lot of those teams at the client and at the trading level realize is, hey, well, actually, there are a load of these curators who have access to signal, which is more readily available. Let me go and transact with them. And that's kind of given birth to curation. And that's been a really powerful kind of lever of growth for us and our customers.
And curation is aggregating various direct publisher relationship data signal into a
exactly.
package.
It gives a very neat way to start to kind of bring some of this signal together on the supply side into a package so you can now buy it. Now
you can scale your buy, and is it all premium inventory, and you guys have direct relationships with like premium publishers?
So that's where there's a whole kind of spectrum of people approach this in a different way. Our approach to the market has been kind of two things. One is we believe that the next era of buying really needs to focus on premium. When you focus on premium, a lot of the programmatic issues, fraud, non-human, all that sort of stuff starts to disappear.
Yeah, which is direct buy, right? Which is direct to, but you have to be able to scale that when considering the number of premium inventory providers there are.
Exactly.
Right?
So we're very well integrated into that premium market. So we bring those publishers along.
What percent of major publishers work with you guys? It's a high percentage, right?
Yeah, 60% of media companies globally use Permutive. So we have kind of very, quite a large share across that bit of the market because, I mean, I think you made a joke about kind of publishers regardless always lose. It was quite a contrarian bet when we went to market to go after publishers, but I think we really believe in that model and the mission they're on. So we kind of attacked the problem, which I think not many people were thinking about at that point in time.
Yeah, and you made a really good point about how you're actually, it sort of filters out what is the fraud problem. We just talked to Dr. Foots. It was the second time he was on our show. And, every time he comes onto the show, he just drops some data that he did in some controlled experiment with a client that just blows your mind, right? And
totally.
And a lot of what he was talking about the last time was sort of how you get this domain spoofing, right? And how SSPs will have spoof domains in the mix.
Yeah, you explain how they launder the spoof domain.
And once they make one jump out of the SSP to other partner SSPs or whoever partners with them, it's laundered immediately. It becomes invisible and you can't track it back. Even though they're actually getting paid for that impression, you can't track it back to a fraudster if you don't catch them the first time around. And so it sounds like you don't have that problem
No, so
inherently when you're sort of managing direct buys and these curated
exactly. So
playbooks.
our belief, and there are a whole host of reasons why, but we think agencies really need to get closer to the supply. And I suppose the offering we kind of take to market with agencies is, hey, we take you closer to premium supply, and we also uniquely able to make the premium supply signals available to you because we manage those. And still today, the SSPs and the DSPs and others can't absorb that scale of signal. But because we run in the publisher environment, we can do your decisioning in their environment and then pass that through the supply chain.
So as you're looking at agencies themselves, like you'd mentioned, obviously with the signal available from publishers, agencies are using it for for some curated deals for sure. But like, do you think there's been a lot of talk about this push towards more value-based or performance-based contracts. I don't think a lot of it's happening yet, but there's certainly interest and there's more discussion than I've ever seen. Whether that becomes a reality or not, I think is still kind of to be determined. But I think if someone could crack that code, they'd have a huge advantage. Like thoughts on what you're doing, how it relates to that potentially, and any trends you're seeing in agencies trying to move their businesses in that direction.
Yes, totally. So I think what we're seeing is clients are putting all this pressure on the FTE model at agencies.
Yep.
And what they're really saying to agencies is, hey, you should make your money by being the best possible investment partner for us. And what does a really good investment partner look like? Well, there are a couple of pieces. One is like, hey, you need to invest my marketing dollars to drive the best possible outcomes for my business. That's a really key part of being a good investment partner. You should leverage the scale of who you are in order to go and negotiate really good rates as a good investment partner for me. You should identify where opportunities in the supply exist for me and go and negotiate those. So there's all these parts which make a great investment partner, but almost all of them are in that agency wheelhouse and strength of like, hey, if they can get really good signal, they can make really good decisions. They're really good at negotiating, and the principal trading business, which used to be a dirty word, I think is very much back in vogue because clients want that as well.
Interesting. Rio and I have kind of been arguing against that in a sense.
So
Simply because of the fact that with it's a pure reach play, right? And so they're really going like, we need to fulfill these budget dollars, and so we're going to buy maybe more inventory that actually exists, right? Like as in real human inventory. And we're going to buy as much of this at scale as possible, which is kind of a race to the bottom because you start paying cheaper CPM rates. You're getting kind of fraudulent and shitty inventory, right?
Yeah.
How
So
does that support outcomes?
Yes, I think outcomes are the counterbalance to principal trading. So the leverage the client has is, hey, here are the outcomes which you need to drive. How you drive those outcomes is down to you. The principal trading part is really the agency saying, hey, you don't want me to execute on a client model. You want me to execute on an outcome-based model. I need to be able to leverage my own strengths to drive profit in this. And clients aren't like naive or stupid. Like they realize that agency needs to make money. It's how do you align the way the agency makes money to what we're doing? And I think like the agency takes a lot of risk in that. Like the agency is pre-buying.
It's like they're sort of leveraged, in a sense, you're leveraging debt to invest in this because you haven't been paid technically by the client, right?
It's funny you say that too, because like when we've done some in-housing exercises with big brands who wanted to bring maybe not the buying itself, but the platform licenses, going paper direct with them, some of the analytics, the measurement, first party data. We've done exercises like that. The hardest part in one of those activities is the contracting. Because you have to explain to the brand, you need to pay the platforms net 30. That's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Meta, Facebook, Google, they're going to shut you down. And they say, well, we normally pay all our vendors net 90. That's non-negotiable. Well, it's like when the unstoppable force is immovable objects, things got to give, right? And guess what? Like Google and Meta are not going to give. So that's the hardest part. It's funny you say that.
Yeah. So I think really what we believe is that agency model is moving very quickly, and actually AI enables them to do that and do that at scale if they can plug themselves into as much signal as possible to make good inventory-based decisions and to make good outcome-based decisions.
And what does what does that architecture look like, right? And how do they? I'm assuming this has got something to do with there's a clean room in here
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. The reason why I say that because the publishers want to completely anonymize or pseudonymize their data because
Those are first party data. Yeah, for
that's their
sure.
golden goose. You can't just put that into another system. So you've got to do it through some sort of intermediary, which would be is that a clean
A-
room in this case?
Exactly. So what we see is you kind of need these two parallel pathways. You need a clean room for the agency to be able to bring their own data sets and pair that with all the publisher supply side signal and identify what supply side signal best represents the data and the audiences the agency has. So
Yep.
if I've gone and built an auto intender audience as an agency, I now need to go and find where that lives across the supply side signal which exists. So that's kind of layer number one. Layer number two is you then need to be able to go and activate that. And today, curation pipes and the way Permutive integrates with that then allows them to take this insight from the clean room and very quickly turn that into a single thing which they can go and activate in the bidstream. So
and is there an onboarding step in there in terms of the dirty word onboarding, where you have to take that signal, you've got X number of IDs for X amount of reach, and then suddenly that's cut in half because you're going through onboarding pipes when you bring it over to the DSPs.
Exactly. So I think this concept of onboarding is changing very rapidly, and I see this in our clients and our customers today. The old world of onboarding is, hey, I want this one-to-one match and I'm going to go and hit that onboarded audience.
Yep.
Now you're onboarding that audience to go and find insight in which signal should I hit. So, hey, I've got this auto intender audience. Here's all the contextual content which they're consuming as they move across the open internet. Here are the audiences which they belong in when they're on all these different media company properties. And it's the onboarding is like a much smaller part of
So it's
what
not
happens.
a one-to-one deterministic match for onboarding, right, anymore. It's more complex than that.
Gone are those days. Because as soon as you do that, you have two problems. Your reach gets massively cut down. So ultimately you can then only address like somewhere between 10 and 30% of consumers have an ID. All of a sudden you lost all this reach. And problem number two is like that onboarding methodology. When you do it with Facebook are pairing with their own signals and then finding your next set of consumers and your next set of consumers. But onboarding in programmatic and open internet has always been to retarget those consumers.
Yeah.
And when all you're doing is retargeting, you're not growing your brand anymore because you're not finding kind of the next set of consumers and the next set of consumers. So that's kind of the second piece. It's like you solve this reach problem, but you also solve an incremental sales problem.
Yeah, and so it sounds like you guys have got a real-time signal of data. So a data flow that's going into the client's architecture, right? So it's going to their cloud data warehouse, whatever. On the agency side, maybe on the brand side? Is it generally on the agency side?
Yes, so it's primarily on the agency side. We do this with brands as well, but agencies, I think, is where we found kind of the biggest pain and business model change and need. So that is which I wouldn't have made the bet on 5 years ago, but that is exactly where kind of the majority of growth comes from.
So if that stream, and tell me if I'm describing this right. So it's pseudonymized. You get the stream of signal that's much richer than they have now because it's sell side signal, right? It's contextual. It's got all that stuff packaged into it, and then there's you guys. I'm assuming are powering kind of a predictive analytics model of some sort that's saying, hey, based on specific outcomes, whatever the outcome is, we can start to find incremental audiences that you may not have seen that don't fit the sort of, apples and orange description of like auto intender, but it might be somebody that's doing, which kind of lends itself to almost automated second party linkages.
Exactly.
Right?
So it's like, hey, that Tesla intender, while 5 weeks ago they were reading a review of Tesla across Hearst or on Top Gear or wherever it might be, now you aren't targeting the 70% of consumers reading that content who don't have an ID. We need to flip this principle we need to kind of transpose this, and actually you want to go and hit the consumer, the intent signal, not at the ID signal.
Yep. Yeah. Which is very contextual in a sense, right?
Very contextual, very behavioral in nature, but a whole lot of data, which today the programmatic pipes just cannot tolerate without destroying their cost margins.
So, Joe, this is the probabilistic targeting that you've been talking about quite a bit, which it's pretty powerful, right? I mean, and you're right. Like people have not been taking advantage of this, but if let's say this does become more of the norm, right? Like, what does this do? Like, looking at SSPs, DSPs, what does the balance of power shift? Like, what does it do to, I mean, if decisioning and a lot of this is starting to happen closer to sell side, it is taking away functionality that DSPs do today to a certain extent, right? So
Totally.
comments on that or thoughts?
Yeah, so kind of four players we think about, right? For the media company, well, now the 70% of the inventory which was ignored is being bought and they see CPMs go up. So when we see these deals being done, they typically see a 2x increase in yield. The like client downstream, now you're reaching a bigger audience, you're seeing sales go up and you're seeing CPAs go down. So we're seeing like somewhere between kind of 100 and 120% sales uplift, and usually CPAs coming down by half. For the agency, now all of a sudden, scale of your audience has gone up, you're reaching more consumers, so you're able to make more money on the budgets you trade, because ultimately Facebook's not taking a principal trading deal with you. You're only making it when you're going on the open internet. So those three parties all benefit. You then have AdTech, which is kind of some players benefiting, some losing. So right now, I would say, like, objectively, the DSP is losing in curation and the SSP is winning, right? It's just a hard fact. It's like the trade desk gets a lower take rate when this is being done in a deal ID and in a private marketplace, and the SSP is able to charge more fees when it's being done in a private marketplace. So like we're seeing this transitioning of, as decisioning moves from buy to sell side, we're seeing a shift in effectively who is able to kind of take margin. But I think if you really zoom out, really kind of
A
agencies
shift to
under
the
huge,
SSP. Hold on. Let's dive into that.
yeah,
So there's a shift in who's taking margin towards the SSP side. So the trade desk, for example, has open path, and
very, yeah.
they've sort of gone to that play. Do you see a future where DSPs in the traditional way we define them kind of go away? Because it kind of reminds me of the take rate conversation we had with Dr. Fu Rio,
Yeah,
where he was saying that what's happening on the buy side is that the take rates are
Yeah, they're just cranking it up.
yeah, they're cranking it up for basically every incremental penny on top of the ask price, right? So let's say you ask 150, you sell for 350, and they take 99% of the
Yeah, the
difference between
insinuation
the
is like
two.
they're having like, okay, new quarter, we got to hit our numbers. Like he was saying some of the major DSPs were able to just like raise the take rates dynamically. To
yeah,
your point, Brett, to gobble up the incremental bids as they're moved up. So yeah, it's
yes.
not
Yeah.
good
I
for
mean, I think,
brands
yeah, I mean,
or
you're seeing
publishers.
DSPs are going direct to supply, SSPs going direct to agencies. You're kind of seeing that I think like this kind of dichotomy or this kind of bifurcation of buy and sell side, that's kind of disappearing, right? And like actually,
Yeah.
we're just seeing there should be a single direct connection between the agency and between the publisher, and both DSP and SSP are trying to do that. But there are
Yeah,
like quite
you've heard
foundational.
here at Signal Knows, Joe Root is calling for an end of the middlemen, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the middlemen, right? Direct connection. And no, but that's a topic that keeps
Makes
coming up
sense.
again and again and again. It's like the middlemen are taking a cut, and
Yeah.
40 cents to every dollar, 50 cents to every dollar, whatever it is.
Yeah, toll takers, right?
Yeah, they're toll takers.
So I think, I think this is the piece which is really happening. On one part is it's not like the DSP serves no value if it's not doing decisioning. Like to the point on Net 30, right, Rio, is like actually the DSPs are like lending to the entire ecosystem, because the publisher's getting paid in like 30 days, the DSP is getting paid in 120. It's
And
really
the SSPs play a role too, right? I mean, they all play a role in delaying payments or facilitating payments. Like they're the market makers, right?
So I don't think we should underestimate like the non-technical role these folk play, which has a lot of value. But yes, the value equation is changing. And when you zoom out, agencies are under margin pressure. Media companies are under huge margin pressure. And then objectively, there's a 70% margin take in between those two. Both sides that are saying, hey, how do we get more direct to each other so that we can find a margin opportunity ourselves?
Yeah.
That is just a reality.
Do you see a future where do you see a future where the agency is moving kind of up the value chain in terms of the services they're offering? Because I think there's a certain commoditization play when they're just doing the principal-based media buying, right? Because a lot of that is being automated, right? And so to me, I'm seeing this picture kind of from your mind in your company, right? Where if you're providing more signal, pseudonymized, so you're not stealing the publisher data, to the agency I can layer on a lot of analytics and decisioning and strategic value on top of just the media buy, right?
Exactly. So,
Which increases their value as a
Well, I think they have
partner.
to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think kind of we really see agencies needing to take a lot more control over kind of how they invest and allocate that media, and they need to take more control as kind of custodians of their customers' dollars. So these principal trading deals and negotiating rates, like you're effectively looking for a really good investment partner. Now, our belief is AI will enable them to do a lot of this stuff better. So like before, I need to staff a team of 100 people to manage all these publisher relationships, where I could staff a team of 10 to go and execute in a DSP. Like that made programmatic just so much more scalable in that FT model type system. But now, like if you really look at what's happening, it's like, hey, agencies can leverage agents to do a lot of the direct buying. And maybe we can get onto what we're seeing on the supply side with publisher agents. But I think agencies are going to start to build all their own agents. And you're seeing that in their operating systems today as they all roll those out. Our job and our belief is we should
got to
provide
tackle
good
this one,
signal
Ria.
for that.
This is
Joe,
been a hot topic.
good pivot here. I love this topic. So we've talked about it a lot here. I actually wrote a series of articles about, agentic trading. Is it happening? How is it going to affect the ecosystem? Is it good or bad? I mean, I've spoken with people at several of the big holdcos, and I don't think anyone's actually doing it. Certainly not at scale yet, but there's a lot of testing. There's a lot of enthusiasm. I want to get your take on a couple of things. I mean, number one, like state of the union, like, is it happening? Do you think it's going to? Timeline? And I think number two would be, like, if this really happens, like, what does this do? Like, if agentic trading is going to really focus on allocation, does this mean that agents are actually hammering out deals by themselves? Does this mean what does this do to the auction? Does this happen pre-auction? They're just planning? Is it more of a planning exercise, or are they actually making deals that are, with more like the old way with price sheets, but are happening at scale because agents are doing it, and maybe the auction gets relegated to more like remnant inventory? I don't know. I mean, it could really change things dramatically, or it could change things not much at all. I posted something the other day about, I was kind of joking, like, well, if agentic trading happens, what happens to DSPs? Will they be around? And I think Adam Heimlich from Chalice, he replied and said, well, you can't bid on something if you don't know the price. So, which is a valid point as well. So like his point was the auction is going to still firmly be there because you need it, right? And a DSP, and all of the bidding happens at a DSP level. So thoughts, I know that was a lot, but thoughts on this, Joe? Like, what will happen?
You can tell Ria's
impact.
passionate about this topic.
Yeah. So I wish I had a crystal ball which predicts it perfectly, but obviously we have a company strategy which we make our investments and decisions on. So we have like a very strong POV. I suppose in terms of like the story is like 2.5 years ago, we're broadly speaking a supply side business. All of our customers are primarily media companies. Like its advertiser business is rocketed, but been like a 2-year thing. So 2.5 years ago, we started to realize, hey, we can make these like quality of life improvements using AI within the platform. We can like allow you to search better within the platform because it kind of better identifies kind of the actual meaning behind, for example, an audience or a segment name. That was really interesting. And all of a sudden, our customers were able to do things a little bit faster. Then around 1.5 years ago, we realized, hey, actually, like these agents are pretty intelligent now and can actually surface decisions back. And if we take this AI and turn it into agents, like what can be done differently? So we started to build agents for audience building, for campaign planning, for campaign optimization. Like week before last, kind of speaking with one of our customers who now uses Permutive.
Halo, right? Is that your agent?
Halo, exactly. So we have this suite we call Halo, which we released across the sell side. They've gone from RFPs taking them 5 hours, sometimes often kind of a couple of days, to 15 minutes. So all of a sudden,
and
now
that's not hyperbolic. That's like the real thing, right?
That's just
because you've got a memory
thing.
system that you've built around how you. There's only so many ways to slice an RFP pie, right?
Exactly.
And you just train the system, which is hugely effective from that.
What a time saver,
yeah.
Exactly. So like even this morning, I got a video from one of our engineers who kind of built out a series of chord skills for our clients to respond to RFPs. He sent me over the demo, like start to finish. It was 10 minutes. I put it on 2x to get through it quickly. But it's like, it's crazy. Like he had a fully generated RFP response 10 minutes after kind of entering in all this detail, and Claude is basically just going backwards and forwards with Permutive to assemble all this. What it allows is like, or another really good example is like this client was only optimizing 10% of their campaigns because that's all the AdOps resource they have. We have these optimization agents which now surface up a load of decisions for them to make on a campaign by campaign basis, and the AdOps teams are using that optimization. So all of a sudden,
so it's basically taking something that would have taken, like the limit was people doing it, right? Because it's so time consuming and so labor intensive. But you're saying with AI, you can just, instead of doing 10% of it, you can do 100%.
Exactly.
That, right?
So now like the throughput, which you can put through direct pipes, like all our publishers teams are dealing with is primarily like direct sold stuff. And all of a sudden you can put 10, 20, 30x more through that for the same cost of headcount. So that means like on the sell side, you've got this capability to transact directly at a scale you would never thought was possible. And on the buy side, what agencies are doing with their operating systems, like you play that forward another 6, 12 months from now and like, hey, you can meet these two worlds. And now you've bypassed programmatic pipes and you're able to transact very directly.
Yeah,
so that's interesting. So sorry, Brett, I one little point that I'll pass over to you. So that's interesting because remember, like Fu, Brett, if you remember last time, like when we were talking, we're talking to him. I mean, like, and he was saying like his thesis was these advertisers should be going directly to, an agency should be going directly to the publishers through their portals, not through, like he was basically saying, don't go to these DSPs, go straight to the buying platforms themselves, buys. And my counter to that was like, then you can have 15, 20, 30 places you're doing your buys. That's really difficult. All the swiveling and managing of that, and then, getting people to do it. And he said, well, an agency should be able to do it. I don't know. I mean, that's a lot.
You could argue that 70-80% of your buy is going to be across 5. Like the number of publishers is like you can count on 2 hands, right? But I think one of his big points was that if you plug AI into basically a polluted open web supply, right, which he's claiming that the open web supply outside of the signal that you're talking about, and I kind of want to lean towards that to say, hey, you've got a lot of authenticated traffic, right? People that have gone to these publishers, they have
premium publishers,
they're premium publishers. Some of it's probably is it all premium or is it all authenticated?
All premium, yeah.
Okay, so you don't have to worry about all of the fraudulent bullshit that's out there in terms of supply that are just like domain spoofs and all that other stuff. Because if the agencies plug their agents into that sort of source of truth, it's polluted, right? And and you're just going to scale nonsense. You're going to scale just empty impressions. Whereas you're saying you guys have an argument because your data source is authenticated and rich and deterministic, right?
Exactly. So I think there are like a number of these factors which are converging on, hey, you want to go direct. So like our role in this and our bias is, hey, we can provide the signal for this next layer of kind of AI agents, and we can also provide an interface which connects you directly into the supply. So I have a bias POV. The other side of this, sadly,
it sounds really compelling. Where do I sign the dotted line here?
But the other side of it, right, is like I think open internet is very rapidly changing, and actually kind of a lot of these challenges is we built these systems to buy across thousands and thousands of like publishers with search just sending so many people to random blogs and web pages, and it created like a very perverse incentive structure which fed a lot of fraud and all these other pieces. The reality is like AI search has killed the long tail of the open internet, right? It's like you will go to your trusted sources, like you'll go to the Financial Times or the BBC or whoever it is for the news and the content.
But everything else is happening directly through a chat experience.
Exactly.
Definitely whittle down the number of websites I visit. Yeah, I mean, I used to have all these tabs open. Now I don't. Now I'll just have 1 or 2. And you're right. The ones I always go to, I still go to. But like the most of the other ones I was just randomly going to because of a search, I'm not anymore.
Exactly. So like now, if I'm a media company and I want to get reach in any given market, there are probably 30 to 50 destinations who I need to refocus my relationship on. And hey, the side effect of that as well is like, one, I can negotiate principal trading rates. So there's an opportunity for me to make money. The inventory is much higher quality, so I'm not having to deal with fraud and all these other things. I get really rich signals, so I can optimize towards better outcomes. Like there are a lot of very good things when you do that, not because like programmatic and the way we did things was bad. It made sense at that point in time. But in the modern world, the way things have changed, it doesn't make sense to buy in that way anymore.
In this new model, like so it sounds like you're working a lot with agencies. It sounds like the holdcos, indies, all the above.
Yes.
And then you have these relationships with publishers. Are you working with buy side at all? You work with marketers? Is that started?
Yeah. So we have kind of two sets of client on the buy side. One is agencies, the other is the actual advertiser. The reality is, though, if the advertiser has the direct relationship with us, it's still the agency who are going out and executing all that stuff day to day. So our paperwork may be with a different team, but 9 times out of 10, the kind of folk who are working with are all the agency folk in the day to day of it. And I think kind of what we see is I think we are most interested in how does AI transform business models, because we think that's where there's the real opportunity to go and build. And this transformation, the agency business model, is just so intense that it is a great time to go and build with these guys.
Okay, so question. So the agencies are trying to build these like AI-driven workflows that can aggregate, let's say, like their scaled demand across the different places they're buying media, right? I also see like the platforms they're also trying to build their own AI, like agentic layer on top of this. And then you see some brands are building their own agents. Like, who wins the battle? Like where does this actually where does the buying eventually take place, or does it not matter?
Yeah. So I suppose state of like play today, as of like this very moment, agencies have gone and built these kind of operating systems for kind of planning all the way through to activation, because it's part of like a efficiency drive within these organizations.
I mean, they're doing all that stuff today. It's just automating it, automating what they already do.
And where the black hat, some people argue that they're not really operating systems. The word OS is taken on a bad word. In some cases, they might be further ahead, but that it's just a collection of point solutions with an AI wrapper on top. Is that what? That's my black hat counterpoint to the operating system argument, which I think makes sense from a positioning and slideware. Like, hey, we're bringing, it's kind of like the marketing cloud talk, like 15, 20 years ago, right?
Buy these companies and we'll smash them together, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but is it how far do you see and how mature do you see that from your agency relationship?
The most mature bit we see within this kind of operating system stack is the data business, right? In the holdcos, they've all gone and built them, or they've merged to kind of bring the assets in, like Axiom into Omnicom. Or alternatively, what you see in the indie landscape is kind of these partnerships, like Horizon with TransUnion for Blue. But regardless, kind of that is very real and exists today. And I think a lot of those workflows are being improved and made better by AI. But the output of that is basically a load of IDs, which the agency then needs to go and activate. And the challenge they have is back to like the
problems we've been discussing a lot.
The problem of addressability, right? Is they go to activate it, it doesn't scale, and then their client teams get frustrated, and then they have to go and use data sets which are not part of the operating system. And the operating system loses.
So it almost goes back to the same onboarding problem. We've got all of these IDs. We've got a match to wherever our DSP, our sort of ad serving is.
Exactly.
And you lose all the scale. Yeah.
So that's the problem we solve today. It's like, hey, we're just going to triple the reach of the output of your operating system by mapping it onto all these supply side contextual signals and behavioral signals, so that you can keep all this working through that one operating system and flow. And that's kind of our value prop back. And that enables them to make those businesses much more robust and bigger. But it also gives them the foundations as they start to build out their own AI agents, as you see principal trading start to play a bigger role, as you see them trying to go directly. Well, hey, those same data foundations which are feeding your operating system can also feed your AI agents. And that's kind of a broader belief we have, is like, hey, actually the agencies can really win if they start to do this. And I think the reality is like they'll probably do so at the expense of some ad tech players.
So looking at sell side, like looking at publishers, we've talked a lot about how they've, whatever's happened in media, they've gotten the short end of the stick, right?
Yeah.
I think that's an easy argument to make, right? When I think Craigslist launched, they lost up to 40% of the revenue just from classified ads, and then the shift to digital. I mean, like the quip was always, traditional dollars to digital pennies, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's been a tough 25 years, and now with AI, right? I mean, I have had clients who've seen reductions of 20, 25, 30, even up to 40% of their traffic's collapsed. And a lot of people who don't know the publishing business well don't realize that's actually money in their pocket that's being taken away as the traffic goes
Yes.
away. It's a big revenue source, right? Is a monetization they have from their properties digitally. So, like, in this new paradigm that we're entering and what you're describing, what you're trying to build, right? Like, will this be better for publishers? Should publishers maybe, is this a golden opportunity for them? And, like, or could they lose out again to another, like maybe new kind of toll takers who swoop in and take and begin to monitor, take away from their monetization? What do you predict for publishers, and like what would be your advice to them?
Yeah. So broad rule of thumb for a publisher today, if you're getting bought programmatically, you're probably getting bought at $1. If you're getting bought
If you're
directly,
written
you're
in
probably,
inventory.
yeah, you're getting bought between $10 and $20. Now, 80% of your inventory is likely being bought programmatically, 20% of it is likely being bought direct. In some cases at 90-10, in
Figure out
some
a way
cases
to turn that,
so
switch that.
every publisher needs to grow direct, and that is the number one strategy. So publishers are proponents and supporters of, hey, if agencies want to buy us more directly, we want to enable that. Now, for a publisher looking to take control of this, why is an agency going to buy you more directly? They're going to buy you more directly if you help them with their data business. So if you can bring their data supply side and scale it, well, hey, you can plug into that. They're going to buy you more directly if you deliver outcomes for their clients. So you need to start focusing on driving outcomes within your own direct campaigns. And what do you need to kind of support this? Well, you need all the right signal available to better deliver on those two value propositions back. And you also need an agent layer to support it.
Yeah, and but you also need to prove outcomes. That's a caveat here, because publishers have always struggled to prove outcomes because they don't control the point of sale. They once an audience bounces off of their site or their properties to somewhere else, hard to those are all living in different worlds, right? So is that a partnership play where they're working with incrementality, MTA, MMM, whatever measurement providers?
Exactly. So the unfair advantage Google and Facebook have is the conversion API.
Yep.
So Google and Facebook get fed this measurement data, and then they optimize all their systems towards that. Publishers have been in this really unfair.
You could argue they fudge attribution a little bit, but keep going, Joe.
Well, and then the retail, we'll add the retail media from a walled garden perspective. Add like the Amazons, where they actually control in a lot of cases the point, or Walmart's, the point of sale. So
exactly.
Outcomes are easier to prove for that type of advertising. But keep going.
Exactly. So the reality is publishers, as they go direct, the big change of publishers really trying to make with their outcome story is become more strategic. So for a publisher, they'll have a series of endemic clients who they already have a very good relationship with them. The first port of call is, hey, actually, let's start talking about the sales outcomes. Let's start talking about kind of the overall strategy you're trying to execute. And then you plug your conversion data in, and we'll start to optimize. And that's what we're seeing with kind of the outcomes, the optimization agent, which Permutive has. It's like you can feed that data in, and now you can optimize towards an outcome. That requires a change in like the sales team and the way you go to market and all those pieces.
Yeah, and
but
maybe
as long as you don't get
tech
that
team in a sense, and you're sort of saying it's almost the platformization, so to speak, for lack of a better word, of the open publisher space or the publisher space.
That
right?
is like
they've got to compete against Meta. They got to compete against Google, right? And there's some people that argue that the open web is just doomed, that everything's going to be walled garden, publishers. Or platforms, but you're saying,
walled gardens or hedge gardens,
yeah. If they start to re-platform them, which goes back to our very first podcast with Stephanie Laser, it was called The Great Replatforming, and this is kind of leaning down that path.
Yeah, I had I was on with one of our CROs last week who used exactly that language. It's like, hey, we're building a platform here, and as a platform, we need to deliver on outcomes. So I think that is totally right. Now, 5 years ago, we were saying, hey, publishers, you should execute walled garden strategy. And publishers saying to us, hey, like, this is good. We're selling more directly, but these agencies don't want to work with 50 walled gardens. They want to work with one. AI and agentic buying really changes that, because like you don't want to work with 50 because that's 50 different walled gardens you have to manage.
But now your agents can. You don't have to. They can do it at scale.
Exactly. And even better now, also if I'm that agency, if I can negotiate the right kind of training agreement with those publishers, actually those relationships can start making me money. And they're much more efficient and effective to run. So it's kind of that business model change for us means that we are really invested in this agentic future.
So
That's
I guess,
awesome.
that's basically answered the question from before, right? If we go to agentic trading, it could be very good for publishers, right? Because it enables them to have more direct sold deals and allows them to be able to counter that argument of like, okay, you don't need centralization anymore because AI can automate this and do it at such a scale and such a pace that humans could never do it. I mean, you can never have enough people to do it. They couldn't react
Ex-
fast enough. So
So,
AI could do this.
Yeah, it's going to
coming
go to
back
where
to
the
that,
signal is, right? It's going to go to where the rich signal is and
great way of
gather as
framing.
much intel that it can gather, right?
Yeah.
And you guys are sort of, how do you make it visible? I mean, how do you I mean, because it's all within your system, right?
So the signal, to your point earlier on clean rooms, we surface the signal in two places. We surface it today inside the clean rooms for them to go and identify what signal they want and where. And then today we make that signal available in two places. We make it available in the programmatic pipes and we make it available in the ad server. And the question is are the agencies going to continue to transact via those programmatic pipes, or are they going to start to build agents which allow them to transact via those direct sold pipes? And time will tell us which path we go down, but I think there is a lot of financial incentive for both the publisher and for the agency for that to be in a more direct relationship. And I think those financial incentives can drive a lot of behavior.
Show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcomes. Love that quote.
Yeah.
Charles Munger. Yeah.
Yeah. Why do we rob banks? That's where the money is. Sorry, bad jokes aside.
I won't use that one for the
So should we go to quick hits? Because I know, Joe, you've got a meeting coming up and right before possible. So I'll start. Who actually controls the AI ad stack today? I mean, we kind of talked about this. You have your vision, buy or sell side today, and where do you think that's going?
I think we bifurcate agencies on one side, publishers on the other, AdTech not really controlling that.
Joe, what's the most overhyped and conversely the most underhyped use of AI in advertising right now?
Good question. Most overhyped is probably the use of Claude and these LLMs. Overhyped because no company we work with has their Claude set up in a way in which they can actually leverage it properly. Yeah. Underhyped, like they don't have a core strategy. Underhyped in the sense that this is transformational to business workflows. And I really do believe like next is the capability of what these organizations can do.
Yeah, 10x. That might be underestimating that. I think it's like I think as you get more sophisticated with these things, we've had a bunch of these conversations. You start to get to like hard to quantify exactly, but anecdotally, you can be like, no, it's not 10x anymore. It's more like 30x or 40x, right? It's incredible when you set up the systems because it can be repeatable as long as it's governed properly.
Yes.
Right. Which I'm kind of learning the hard way. I'm trying to get as technical as you were back in your computer science days. It's hard though, man. I was an English major. I mean, you got to change the way I think about things. Full circle here.
So science degree has no benefit with this either.
No, you're just as like
Well, a lot of code now is just English now. English.
Yeah.
I mean, code's total. The concept of what is code. I mean, I'm glad. I studied computer science like up until I actually went through a couple of years in college, right? And like I'm glad I didn't finish the degree. I regretted it over the years, but now I'm actually kind of glad, and I'm glad I think being a journalist and learning how to write well and think well and reason and argue is probably as useful as anything these days.
Yeah, I tell you, and I always talk to like product leaders and technical people, and I'm like, you just learned that 3 months ago. Like, I mean, no time of my life until now have I had my terminal open, right? GitHub, Codex, Claude, right? Maybe like a Hermes or OpenCall agent. Like, it's just changed. It's just a completely different world that we're kind of working through, and it just gives you all this ability and control and buildability. You're less reliant on other people to do some of this stuff for you, right?
Yeah. I think we see the role of engineers is just changing so radically, but actually ones who can think like an architect are like 10x more effective, impactful.
So next quick hit, is curation still relevant in an AI-driven world, or is it going to be abstracted away, so to speak?
I think curation as a technological pipe hugely valuable if programmatic continues to be a thing. Curation in its first generation of, hey, I'm going to package up inventory and resell it. I don't see that model as a long-term model.
Yep.
Joe, if you were to bet, would you say open web gets stronger or weaker because of these trends that we've been talking about and what's happening with AI?
I think premium end of the market becomes stronger. If they can just double the amount they direct sell, they grow revenue enormously through this period. Let alone if they can turn that 20% into 60 or 70%, that is huge growth for these businesses, given that it's replacing primarily $1 programmatic with $10 direct.
Yep.
I think long tail open internet, I just don't see how it survives this era.
So move towards subscriber based. I mean, all if they want to survive, they've got to authenticate and have subscribers.
Whether
right?
it's authentication, subscribers, ultimately, if you've got a depth of relationship with the consumer where they trust you and you are part of that consumer's habit, you are in such a strong position. And I think so many media companies are part of the habit of the consumer.
Yeah, and back to what we talked about, I think this is a good concluding remark, is that our media consumption strategy or approaches have changed, right? And we tend to, all that long tail stuff is now being siphoned off by the LLMs, and you're going direct to a handful of
the
publishers,
aperture's closed quite a bit.
handful of CTV providers for basically all of your content.
And
right?
also, for a lot of our media companies, you may spend 10 minutes with them each day getting caught up on the news, but you're spending 3 hours with them on podcasts. So our media companies have just diversified so heavily into video, into audio. The large players are everywhere. They're not just kind of web.
Yeah, the old editorial model is can't stand up on its own. Well, this has been phenomenal. I mean, any
Great
additional questions for you?
conversation.
Yeah,
No,
this is great. Joe, you are a
yeah.
blast. Super happy to meet you. It was just ton of fun. We should definitely meet up in the city sometime, and we're gonna get Rio to move back to New York City out of Denver.
My wife wants to. It's funny. She keeps trying to push me on it.
It's inevitable. I've been here for 25 years, and I may never leave. And like, I take the old Lou Reed quote. He's like, why would I ever go anywhere else? And I was like, yeah, that's kind of why I moved here. It was that Lou Reed album, New York, right? With him I was like, I like that guy, man.
It's a great city.
It is a great city.
I haven't seen Lou Reed.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for having you on, and thanks to the audience for joining us today and making it through the end. If you made it this far, join us at dev.signalandnoise.ai. That's where we publish all of our editorial, video, podcast content. We've got a bunch of executive contributors that contribute content as well, and we are on Yahoo. We're not on Yahoo.
We're on YouTube.
We're on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast, and wherever you listen to your podcasts or watch your videos. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
So long.